Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The world in the future is divided into two sides, with the rich staying in one place and the poor in another. Any poor child who reaches the age of 20 gets only one chance to live among the rich. These children are deceived by a test called the process, and a certain percentage of the participants are selected, take the opportunity, and never return. In the 104th year of this system, Michelle hears a voice coming from her headphones and knows that the test has begun, and that she will be able to register. A very large number of the poor head to participate in the test, and Michelle and her friend Bruna go with them, deciding to try their luck. Everyone reaches the highest point on the hill and enters the testing facility. There, they are given new and clean clothes, and Ezekiel appears to explain the details of the process to them, telling them that a very limited number will be chosen, while the rest will return to the poor area again. Ezekiel praises the ideal system they live in, telling them that there are those who oppose this system and try to destroy it, and he asks them to adhere to the rules and implement them precisely. He asks everyone to repeat some words with him, then sends each of them to their room. Michelle takes advantage of this moment because it's the first time she sees this place, and she explains to Ezekiel that she is here to carry out some routine procedures. He approaches her and inquires about her hobbies, then speaks with Nair, the council director, and asks him to focus well this year because the process this year is very important for them. He explains to her that for the first time in 100 years, someone was killed in the wealthy area, and that he is the one who selects the 3% each year. He asks her to pay close attention during the selection, because the person who committed the crime might be one of the poor people he chose in the past years. He explains to her that the other council members want to replace him and appoint someone else in his place. After he finishes talking to her, he gets very angry and tries to comprehend the disaster he might face if he gets fired from his job. The testing process for the participants begins, and they are asked many questions to determine their intelligence level. They also try to learn about the details of their personal lives and the experiences they have gone through over the past 20 years. It is very important for them that the person who will be chosen takes care of themselves and their cleanliness. One of the girls among the participants starts to get nervous and can't articulate clear words due to extreme anxiety, which leads her to leave the test quickly. On the other hand, a young man speaks confidently and answers their questions, but Dennis pressures him to reveal everything inside him and uncover his true nature, which exposes his nervous personality. He also leaves the test. It's Michelle's turn, and she is asked if she knows anyone who has passed the test before. She admits that she was in a relationship with her boyfriend who passed and became wealthy. She says she wishes to succeed to be with him, and the person asking her tells her to stop thinking about this if she really wants to succeed, and demands that she prove she is here for herself and not for her boyfriend. He asks her to take off the necklace she is wearing and shows her that he has looked into her boyfriend's personal file and knows that he has died. Zach's story, where Cassia calls him and tells him that they managed to capture one of the rebels. All of this seems cruel, and she pressures him to get all the information he has. Meanwhile, it is revealed that one of the test participants was a member of the rebel group, but he refuses to disclose his identity. At that moment, all the remaining participants are moved to the second stage. One of the losers stands on the balcony and decides to commit suicide because he considered this to be his last chance in life. The workers quickly take his body and clean the place as if nothing happened. Afterwards, each participant stands in front of the scanner to verify their registrations. Joanna notices that Raphael's registration is fake, but the optical scan approves it. Everyone passes without any problems, and each is given a small, flimsy plastic ball and asked to collect as many cubes as possible. They explain the rules to them well, and when the time starts, everyone attacks the cubes and tries to collect as many as possible. Michelle notices that Fernando can't play well because he is in a wheelchair, so she tries to help him and gathers the blocks for both of them. As time passes, the anxiety increases because time is running out, and Raphael only collects 8 pieces and tries to reach 9. He steals one from the young man sitting next to him, and the two get into a fight, escalating the situation. Also, Michelle only collects 8 cubes, but she decides to give him all her cubes so he can win. In the end, she and Joanna win. After passing this stage, the supervisors discover that Raphael is cheating, and he starts losing his temper. He approaches one of them and gets into a fight, and when everyone intervenes, Marco lets him go, feeling regret. Raphael sits aside, and Michelle tells him that she knows perfectly well that he is just trying to gain sympathy from those around him after everything he has done. She offers him to cooperate together for success, and explains to him that if he betrays her, she will reveal to everyone that his recording is fake. At the same time, they meet with Denise and pressure her in a strange way because he suspects she is involved with the man who died in the area. After Dennis leaves, she returns again and thanks her for everything she has done for her. Then, Cassia comes and tells her that she has evidence. She takes Michelle and Bruna away from the group and moves them to another place, where she covers their eyes with a strange black substance. Then, she takes them into a room, removes the substance, and explains to them that someone has died in the area. When she did some research, she discovered that this person lived in the same building they reside in, which means one of them might be part of the rebel group and has come to avenge this person's death. Cassia starts crying to make them confess the truth, and she threatens them a little. When she leaves them together, they resume their conversation, and each assures the other that she knows nothing about the matter. In the end, they attack Cassia and flee from her. And suddenly, Michelle starts to remember her training with the rebel group and realizes that she was not in a romantic relationship and that the chain she was wearing was of no use. It was just a trap. Then she realizes that she came specifically to take revenge on Zach and kill him because he killed her brother. When Cassia returns, she attacks Michelle, and unfortunately she shoots her and kills her. Michelle tries to take the weapon from her, but Ezekiel enters at the same moment and takes the weapon first. Everyone starts to think that Bruna is the agent and that Michelle is not guilty, and they ask her to keep what happened a secret and not tell anyone. They take her and return with the other participants, and Michelle sits alone on the side, crying because she was the reason for the girl's death. The next day, they all undergo a comprehensive medical examination, and when it's Fernando's turn, who uses a wheelchair, he makes a move and activates a flying device, so they take him away and throw him in the lab. The doctor examines him and tells him that he has no health issues. She shows him the swellings he is suffering from, and he tells her that he feels pain all the time and can't find a solution. He believes her after the doctor reassures him that he feels his leg as he used to before. The doctor tells him that it will take some time, but he will be fine. Then Fernando returns and joins the other participants for another test. They enter a room filled with statues of different shapes and are asked to analyze the scene before them and determine which statue killed the girl who died. Everyone is moving around the place trying to find clues to help them, but many of them give incorrect answers and feel that the task is extremely difficult. Michelle discovers traces of a vaccine on the girl's body and sees that she is from the poor. Fernando says that the girl might have invited her friends for dinner to poison the woman with whom her husband was cheating. Fernando believes that his story is the correct one and tries to press the button to confirm it. But Rafael stops him at that moment and tells him that this answer is wrong, because that story has a specific purpose and is not just an ordinary story. Then he sees that the girl might have been allergic to silver because everyone else was wearing silver except her. Everyone gathers the evidence that confirms the validity of his story, and they decide to press the button. In the end, everyone rejoices because the answer is correct, and they move on to the next stage, except for one person who didn't provide any evidence. Later, Aline noticed that Ezekiel left the building and went to an isolated area, where he collected some hidden items from underground. She used the cameras to track his movements, and found that he was wearing old clothes and wandering in a poor neighborhood as if he were a beggar. And when he noticed that there were cameras monitoring his movements, he ran away, and all the food he had with him fell to the ground. In the building, they divided the participants into groups of 7 people and assigned them different cases. They found a bag containing only 6 coins, and they couldn't exit through the door unless they had this coin only. They were given a deadline to choose one person to leave the group. Rafael took a coin and felt that he was safe in all cases. Marco came to him and hit him, claiming that he would throw the coin on the ground and leave all the coins in the bag so they could think carefully. They sat for a long time talking without reaching a solution. Then they finally decided to draw their names on Agatha's scarf and made strips. Whoever picked the shortest strip would be out, and unfortunately, it was Joanna who lost. Each of the remaining 6 took their coin from the bag, and after a while, Lucas discovered that his bag was empty. He searched everywhere for his coin but couldn't find it, and he realized that Joanna had hidden it so that he would lose, and she took his place. Then they got into a fight with each other, and Ezekiel returned to the building again. He reviewed the cameras and watched the footage he appeared in, then began matching the scenes with what was on the camera, and then put his face in the water as he usually did. After that, Alan sent all these scenes to Matthew, the council member who wants to remove Ezekiel from his position, to find out what Ezekiel is hiding and doing behind their backs as soon as possible. At the same time, Eichel learned from Nye that Alan was passing all his news to Matthew, and he asked her to be very careful because she wouldn't leave him alone. At that time, everyone arrived at the therapist and saw all the people they had lost, and the sadness and grief were evident on them. Then, Denise called the group and explained to them that they had to pass through the tunnel and be with their group within 5 minutes. The countdown began, and the lights started to dim significantly, making it difficult to see around them. They heard strange noises, and suddenly Fernando found himself able to walk, believed it, and realized that there was a gas causing hallucinations, which is why everyone was unconscious. Each of them tried to overcome themselves to reach the finish line. Joanna felt that she couldn't control the hallucinations, and she thought she had won, and reached the finish line. But she started hearing strange voices and thought she was cheating. Then she suddenly regained consciousness and decided to help her colleagues cross the tunnel. Everyone reached the end at the last moment, and the door opened at the very last moment, saving them from loss. After that, they told everyone where they would sleep, and Agatha felt that she was still affected by the gas and couldn't calm herself down due to the numerous hallucinations. The doctor explained to her that she would get better soon. Then Joanna remembered the day she stealthily entered a house and stole a gun and a bag full of food. Suddenly, she heard a sound behind her, got scared, and fired in self-defense, unfortunately killing a small child. In the city, Joanna saw someone moving outside, so she followed their shadow until she reached the bathroom. And when she entered, she saw the same dead child, so she ran out in a state of panic and went insane. She tried to kill her, as her mental state was very bad. Raphael saw them and kept watching them. After a while, he felt guilty, so he approached Agatha and threatened her, then stopped to watch Isaac on the cameras, where a child was trying to enter the place. He went himself to check what was happening and found the child walking alone in the facility. He learned from him that his name was Augusto and that he had entered out of hunger. Ezekiel deleted all his screenshots, then took him and placed a lot of food in front of him and gave him glasses to see clearly. He also offered him cubes to play with, and when she knocked on the door, Ezekiel quickly hid the food. And when she entered, she asked him why there were 2 plates despite him being alone, and she started to beat around the bush to trap him. But Ezekiel evaded her as much as he could, and when she left, the boy quickly sneaked out and gave him a lot of food, asking him not to come again during this period because the situation was dangerous. Then we returned to Joanna, who remembered the day she went to City and asked her to give her a fake registration and planted another name for her so she could register in the system. And since then, her name became Joanna. After several hours of implanting the new chip, Joanna woke up from her sleep and learned from the lady that there is a large financial reward for anyone who finds the killer. The lady tried to reveal that she was the one who killed the child, and she left her house. In the settlement, Raphael saw her sitting in a corner, noticed the mark of the slide on her, spoke to her kindly, and asked her to cooperate and help each other to win. The next morning, she and Fernando woke up and wrote that the path they had entered through had become blocked. Fernando went to tell the others and said that they were trapped, and each of them went to search in hopes of finding a way out. They searched everywhere, but they didn't see any staff or any food for them. Marco wrote that this was a test, and he remembered the days when he lived with his family before coming here. He called his other teammates and showed them the numbers displayed on the board in front of them, telling them that they needed to memorize all these numbers because they would need them in the next room. They put their ideas together to apply the codes and opened the door. They worked together as a team, and each one did what was asked of them. In the end, they opened the ventilation, and some food came out of it. They felt sad because the gate had not opened yet, and they began to argue about who should take the food. They finally decided to use alphabetical order, so Agatha ate first. At this time, Ellen goes to Ezekiel's room and tries to use his computer, copying his fingerprint so she can unlock the device. Unfortunately, her attempt is rejected, and a notification reaches Azek, who knows that someone has entered the room. She searches the entire room in hopes of finding something against him. Cassie enters and leaves after escalating the situation, while Ezekiel talks to the council and accuses Matthew of sending someone to spy on them, telling them everything that happened with him. Meanwhile, the participants try to solve the puzzles that appear to them periodically so that they can get enough food for all of them. They use all their energy and work together to solve the questions, and in the end, they manage to eat without any problems. Then, Eichel decides to make some adjustments to the game and explains his plan to his staff in detail, where he exploits the contestants who, upon solving the puzzles, do not receive any food and are forced to sit for a long time without food, making them feel tired and exhausted. They decide to sleep and continue the next day. Meanwhile, Marco appears and tries to convince them that the door might open soon if they wait a little longer. Meanwhile, Agatha starts looking at the numbers strangely, and then everyone rushes to get the available food and creates a big mess. Michelle asks them to be quiet so they can distribute the food fairly. Marco feels that the test has changed and starts thinking of another way to escape and win. Some go to break the iron from the bed in an attempt to force the door open, and after great effort, they manage to open it, but only a small opening. Everyone feels afraid that the door might close on them, but one of them decides to take the risk and goes first, only to discover another closed door, forcing him to return. They are thinking about how to at least get food, and Marco tells them he has an idea and asks them to follow him. And when they refuse to listen to him, he becomes very aggressive and tries to kill one of them to take their food by force. A great chaos ensues due to Marco's actions, and time rewinds to reveal that Marco's family had all passed the test and left him alone with the poor to live a better life. At the same time, Marco believed he could take his pregnant wife with him when he won. Fernando watches what is happening outside the place and goes to warn his group. Then Joanna finds Agatha unconscious on the ground, so she finds her shoe and uses it to escape through the ventilation shaft, hoping to find a way out. At the same time, Michelle, Fernando, and the rest of the group are trying to build a barrier to protect themselves from Marco and his followers. Eichel explains to Joanna that they have passed the first part of the test, and there is still the second part to go. He says that the purpose of the test is to teach them that the world is not fair and that a person reveals their true self in such circumstances. They continue to fight among themselves, steal food, and Marco hits a girl on the head with an iron hammer, and everyone around him believes in his brutality. When Raphael learns that the girl has died, he fights with Marco, and after everyone gathers around him, Raphael is forced to escape. He reaches Michelle's cell, but she refuses to open the door for him. He approaches her and whispers in her ear, and she agrees to help him. Ezekiel explains to Joanna that the participants are the ones who started this war and they must end it themselves. He asks her to rest and offers her delicious food, telling her that if she eats, she will be disqualified from the competition, but he encourages her to return to complete the test as she might win. Meanwhile, Marco is breaking part of the barrier they built, and Joanna returns to hit one of his followers. While gathering everyone Marco has hit, a great war breaks out among them, and many of Marco's men die. Joanna screams and asks them to stop, then gathers the contestants and asks them to calm down. Suddenly, the door opens in front of them, and they all quickly exit the place. He leaves Agatha unconscious, and no one thinks of helping her. Marco and his injured men cannot move, while Marco tries to crawl to the door. But in the end, the door closes on him, and he is killed. At that moment, Raphael remembers a day when he was sitting with his brother talking, and he discovers that his brother had participated in the test before and lost. And this time, it was his brother's turn. Raphael makes a plan, takes his brother's chip, takes the ventilator, buys it, and goes to the rebels to tell them that he has discovered a way to access the energy of the rich. At the same time, Ezekiel comes out and talks to them, saying that only 99% have reached this stage. When he returned to the facility, he found Eileen sitting in his room, showing him the pictures of Augusto that she had managed to find. She told him that she hadn't reported him yet, but she gave him two options, saying that if he spoke, he would be sentenced to death. She explained that she could keep his secret on the condition that he finishes this competition and resigns. After that, Ezekiel goes back to the past, where we learn that he was married to a woman named Julia, and they lived together happily. One day, Julia was preparing to meet one of the contestants because she was pregnant, and the matter went unnoticed by the other members. As the time for the next competition approached, Ezekiel asked Julia to be his personal assistant this year. She tried to help him control the riots caused by the rebels, but due to the chaos, someone was accidentally killed. Ezekiel, Julia, and Cassia saw them through the surveillance cameras, and then Julia noticed a child standing and looking at them strangely through the camera. And when she approached him, she discovered that it was Augusto. Later, Julia grabbed one of the contestants and hit him violently, which led to a complaint against her, resulting in her permanent removal from her position. Ezekiel noticed that work was affecting her mental state, so he suggested that she take a break and live outside the facility for a while. Despite her determination to stay with him, he refused to listen to her. When Julia was alone, she started watching the child on the camera and tracking his image. The following year, while Ezekiel was preparing for the new competition, Julia continued her search, trying to reach Augusto's address. She became distracted and unable to sleep, constantly thinking about him. Izzy noticed her behavior and started tracking her, until he discovered that she had watched the same scene 127 times. The next morning, he told her that he had seen the video and urged her to tell him what she was thinking instead of having to send her to a recovery center. Julia eventually admitted that Augusto was her son, and she felt guilty for abandoning and leaving him. Ezekiel told her that this is against the law and she can't do that, but she didn't listen to him. Julia continued watching the video and searched for her son's address by all means. She finally decided to leave the facility and escape. Ezekiel noticed her attempt to escape and ordered the guards to close the gate, but she managed to get out at the right moment. Ezekiel followed her, trying to stop her, grabbed her firmly, and sent her to the recovery center. Julia remained silent the whole time, watching her son's picture. The next day, Ezekiel learned that she had committed suicide, and this was the first suicide in the affluent area. After that, Ezekiel began to suffer psychologically and tried to forget what had happened. He disguised himself as a beggar and went out in search of Augusto by himself until he managed to find him and continuously offered him food, trying to take care of him. He told him that he had come on behalf of his mother and that he would take care of him until he turned 20. Later, Eileen submitted a report to the council confirming that Ezekiel had made no mistake. At the same time, Michelle was talking to Raphael, who told her that he knew she belonged to the rebels and revealed to her that he was here for revenge as well. They agreed to protect each other and keep their secret. After that, all the contestants were assigned to separate rooms. Each of them found pictures of their families, and they also received videos showing their family members talking to them. Fernando's father admitted that the families are being bribed to convince their children to withdraw from the competition. Fernando thought about leaving the competition due to the violence and death he witnessed, but he decided to stay after his father threatened him that he wouldn't find a place to return to and that he wouldn't speak to him again. As for Joanna, an orphan, she was attempted to be kidnapped by a strange man who tried to hand her over for a reward, but she resisted him and hit him, trying to escape, and when he grabbed her and tried to strangle her, she asked him to kill her because she wanted to end her life. Later, she learned that this was a test to ensure her remorse for the crime she had committed and her desire to start a new life, and she passed it. Meanwhile, Michelle faced a choice between taking the money and leaving, or continuing in the competition. She thought of her little brother, Bruno, and decided to stay despite the broken box containing the money. When the employee returned, she informed him of her decision to continue. A big argument broke out between Raphael and his mother, who insisted he take the money to help his family, especially after what he did to his brother to get here. And when he refused, his mother slapped him and left, but he noticed that many participants chose to take the money and withdraw. At that time, Ezekiel goes to meet Augusto and gives him some things, telling him that he won't be able to see him again. Before he leaves, he prays for him. After that, he feels a deep sadness because he won't be able to stay with him. And when he returns to the facility, he tells Cassia that there is a threat, but refuses to disclose the details. After the test is over, the remaining participants are gathered, and the next stages are explained to them. Individual interviews begin with each participant, starting with Joanna, who passes her test and moves on to the next stage. She is asked to convince a couple to enroll their son in the next competition, and when Michelle enters the couple's home, she discovers that they are Bruna's parents, and she angrily tells them that their daughter has died. Michelle tries to console them, then begins to bring up the topic of registering their son, explaining that it is in his best interest. At first, the father strongly rejects the idea and argues with her. Michelle admits that her brother also died in the previous competition and cries as she recounts her experience, pointing out that she realized the system is not to blame. In the end, the parents agree to enroll their son, and Michelle passes her test. When Cassia asks her about her brother's story, Michelle reveals that she made up the story just to convince the parents. On the other hand, Fernando is asked to put the contestants through tests without their knowledge, and he succeeds after a great effort. He expresses his joy at succeeding in this test. As for Raphael, he faces a challenge in convincing one of the contestants to help him. He tries to talk to Joanna, but she refuses to help him, insisting that everyone knows her true nature. He then turns to Fernando, confesses to him that he is one of the rebels, and asks for his help to change the country. He explains to him that Michelle is also a rebel and threatens to report her if he doesn't help him. Fernando is forced to agree, and both of them succeed in passing the test. Michelle returns to her room and tries to extract a capsule she had taken from the rebels, which she was supposed to swallow if she got caught, but instead, she takes the capsule with her. During dinner, she goes to Ezekiel to thank him and takes the opportunity to put poison in his drink. But before he drinks it, he is asked to talk to his colleagues, and he offers the drink to someone else, who collapses dead after consuming it. After the examination, it turns out that the drink was poisoned. Ezekiel starts reviewing the cameras to find out what happened. Meanwhile, Raphael confesses to Michelle that he saw what she did. Fernando tells her that he will try to protect her because he loves her and wants to stay by her side. Ezekiel gathers the participants again and asks them to stay in the hall until they are informed of the next step. Michelle feels tired and loses consciousness, and Fernando tries to help her. She confesses to him that she is thinking of turning herself in, suggesting that Ezekiel might have put a serum in the drink to force her to confess. They plan a solution together, but Ezekiel informs the council that she is responsible and presents edited footage that incriminates her. Ellen is asked to defend herself, but she fails to convince the council. Nair enters her file and replaces all the evidence that could incriminate Ezekiel, but no one believes her. At the same time, the captured rebel asks Cassia to honor her agreement with him, and instead of killing him, she lets him go. In the end, the participants are all told that they have passed all the tests and have become rich. Fernando rushes to look for Michelle, but Ezekiel tells him that she is done. Fernando decides to resign because of what happened, but when he tries to leave, a staff member tells him that this was his last test and that he failed it. Fernando is shocked and asks to see Michelle, but she refuses to let him in and closes the gate in front of him. At that time, they try to kill Michelle by drowning her in water, hoping she will talk, but she completely refuses. Ezekiel asks the guards to leave, then reveals to her that they had suspected her from the beginning. He continues to pressure her until she admits that they killed her brother and that she came to take revenge on them. Then, Ezekiel shows Michelle videos that prove her brother is still alive and living a very happy life. He tells her that the rebels lie to people only to gain their loyalty and not for any other purposes. He bargains with her, saying that if she shares what she knows, he will let her go, but she refuses to disclose anything. Ezekiel leaves the room and lets her look at her brother's pictures. Meanwhile, Nair talks to Ezekiel and tells him what happened with Augustin, but she insists that she cannot help him with anything else. The winners arrive at the park to begin the purification process. Cassia takes Joanna to her office, and Ezekiel announces to everyone that they must take a vaccine to protect against diseases and tells them that they prohibit reproduction in their area because children are born into a world full of injustice. He explains to them the rules and laws of the new world and gives them a chance to think about whether they want to follow this path or return to their old lives. After much thought, Raphael agrees to take the vaccine. Ezekiel approaches Michelle and tells her that she should take revenge on the rebels because they are the ones who lied to her. In the end, Michelle gives in and reveals everything she knows about them and their plans. After that, the guards send people to her old neighborhood and take everyone whose names she mentioned. Ezekiel gives her the vaccine too and agrees to let her stay with them, but he tells her that she will spend some time in the recovery center until she gets better and starts a new life. Ezekiel tries to find out if there is any other spy among the participants, but she assures him that she is the only one. He then goes to talk to Joanna and tells her that she is very smart and cannot just be an ordinary person living here. He offers her a job with them at the facility and a significant position. He also shows her a picture of the man who tried to kill her before she came here and gives her the chance to press a button to kill him. But she refuses to kill him and tells him that she is not a killer. And when he pressures her to change her mind, she assures him that she will not lose her humanity just to please him. He also kicks her out of the building. In front of the door, she meets Fernando, and they head together to her old neighborhood. In the facility, Ezekiel suffers from a psychological struggle due to all the lives lost as a result of their actions, and he begins to contemplate suicide. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification